Today we're going to talk about Pfizer's COVID vaccine getting full approval by the FDA and Republicans' shameless stunt in response to that, and the fight brewing among Democrats for September as far as the $1 trillion infrastructure bill and the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill are concerned. And I interview California Governor Gavin Newsom about the recall election and what's at stake if a Republican were to win the race. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're listening to No Lie. Some welcome news here. The Pfizer vaccine was given full approval by the FDA, which means that it could hopefully boost public confidence in the vaccine and also give way to vaccine mandates. And we're seeing that almost immediately. The U.S. military, for one, will begin mandating the COVID vaccine. An avalanche of colleges. We've got the entire University of California system, Quinnipiac, Yale, UW, Georgetown, Howard, American Emory, University of Chicago, Notre Dame, LSU, Tulane, Amherst, Emerson, Harvard, MIT. I mean, literally hundreds of colleges and universities. A number of these schools had already mandated vaccines, and this approval is just going to solidify the already firm legal ground that they're on as far as vaccine mandates are concerned. Public schools across the U.S., with California becoming the first state to require all teachers and staff in K-12 public and private schools to either get vaccinated or undergo weekly testing. And so, especially where certain state and local governments have failed to take the necessary steps to protect people, it is promising to see schools and businesses and even other agencies take these common sense steps to help get this pandemic under control. And of course, this also means that those Republicans who use the lack of full approval as an excuse to continue pushing back against the vaccine are clearly going to change their tunes, right?
FDA just giving full approval to Pfizer's COVID vaccine. It's the first vaccine to get that full approval, and in record time, too. That has critics asking if the process was rushed. Was it? Well, let's bring in Admiral Brett Giroir, former Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary, and of course, he was our testing czar. So tell us a little bit, sir, about what this moment means to get full approval.
Well, this is a very big moment in Operation Warp Speed history, in the history of our vaccines, our fight against the pandemic. Prior to this, we had emergency use authorization. What that really meant is that the public health benefits outweighed the known and potential harms. What this says today is we know the benefits, we know the harms, and this vaccine is safe and effective, and every confidence can be given to that. Americans should feel very good, even better than they did yesterday, about getting the vaccine.
Yeah, what took so long?
Well, apparently not. Because now, instead of the vaccine approval process being too slow, just like that, we've pivoted to the vaccine approval process being too fast. And look, I'm not going to waste my time or yours humoring these people and their whiplashy takes on the FDA approval process, but I will say this. This is all the proof you need that their complaints were never being made in good faith. It was never about the vaccine. It was about perpetuating the same culture war that landed us in such a dire position in the first place. And it's not even because they actually believe what they're saying about the vaccine. Like, let's be real here. All of these people have gotten it themselves. Rupert Murdoch got it in December of 2020, 5 minutes after the thing was available. They say these things because they're too afraid of their base not to. It's the tail wagging the dog. Right-wing media and Republican officials are now controlled by this lunatic faction of their base because those people are loud. And so now, the people effectively running the GOP are the same people who think that vaccines are some communist plot for the government to track your movements, or who think that masks are making you inhale lethal levels of carbon dioxide, or that getting the shot means that you get magnetized. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but when you have the doctors and nurses and people who actually went to medical school saying one thing, and then the Looney Tunes showing up to school board meetings because they did their own research saying the opposite, and right-wing media siding with those people, then yeah, that's who's leading the show on the right. The fact is that this should be an absolute no-brainer. Again, FDA approval or not, 0.004% of those being hospitalized are vaccinated. That's it. And 0.001% of those dying from COVID right now are vaccinated. That right there should be the first, second, and third things that we look at. That's all you need. Those numbers don't lie. The right-wing pundits do, but the numbers don't. So look, if you're watching this podcast right now, there is a very, very good chance that you've already been vaccinated. But there's also a good chance that someone in your family, someone you love, isn't. Like just this week, I was able to help convince one of my own family members to get it. And if you think that just because of what I do for a living means that my entire family takes my advice as gospel, then you do not know Jewish women. All of that's to say, it's not too late and people are still open to it. So do your part and reach out to someone, because it could be the difference between a trip to the ICU or not. Next up, I want to talk about the intra-party feud happening within the Democratic Party over the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill. Now, a group of 9 moderates, led by Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, decided that they wanted an immediate vote on the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. Now, of course, progressives and Democratic leadership had always intended for the infrastructure bill and the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which would include the rest of Biden's agenda, the so-called soft infrastructure priorities, to move forward in tandem, together. This way, we could be sure that one wouldn't pass without the other, and the entirety of the agenda would get enacted, as opposed to just voting for the infrastructure bill passing, and then all of a sudden the moderates balk when it comes time to pass the reconciliation bill. Now, also complicating things is that while the bipartisan infrastructure bill is done and ready to vote on, the reconciliation bill hasn't even been written yet. And if you think that the struggle to get the hard infrastructure bill passed was a lot, just imagine how much harder it'll be to hammer out a bill 3.5 times the size. But now, this faction of conservative Democrats wanted to vote on the first bill immediately and threatened not to vote for the reconciliation package if they didn't get their way. And with only a few votes margin in the House, we can't afford to lose 9 Democrats and expect anything to pass. And so what ultimately happened now was that Pelosi and those moderates settled on the date of September 27th to consider the bipartisan infrastructure package. And yet, because progressives likely won't touch the bipartisan infrastructure bill without the reconciliation bill also ready to go, that means that the clock is ticking to get the reconciliation bill going. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure what these moderates were trying to accomplish here. To show that they have the power to sink the Democratic Party's entire legislative agenda? Great. Yeah, there's a 3-vote margin. Any 3 people have that power. Doesn't make you special. It makes you a massive pain in the ass. And beyond that, all of this is to pass the infrastructure bill, a month or 2 before the reconciliation bill? That's what the rush is for? They can't wait a few weeks so that these 2 bills can move in tandem? Unless, of course, their intention is to sink the $3.5 trillion reconciliation package, in which case they are in for a rude awakening if this random group thinks they're going to, outsmart Pelosi. Because say what you will about her, whether you like her or not, there is no one more effective on the left than Pelosi. You don't have a caucus that spans from AOC to Josh Gottheimer and hold them together with 0 defections if you don't know what you're doing. So if she says that these 2 bills are going to pass together, I would bet my last dollar that that's what's going to happen. Now, I do want to make one more point here, and that is that there may actually be a silver lining to this timeline where things are clearly moving faster than we have been anticipating for the reconciliation package. And that is that we can pass these bills as soon as possible so that A, we can celebrate what would be the biggest, most transformative legislative achievement since the New Deal, and B, we can move on to voting rights, which is the next thing on the docket for Congress. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you know that there is nothing more important right now than passing the Voting Rights Act and the For the People Act. How we do that, I don't yet know, but what I do know is that focusing all of our energy on these issues will only increase the pressure to ensure that they get done. What's certain, though, is that failure isn't an option here. To watch my interview with California Governor Gavin Newsom about the recall election and what's at stake if a Republican were to win the race, check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel or click the thumbnail right here on this screen.